I spent 20 years of my life growing up, 20 years of my life messed up, and 20 years of my life locked up. But I never gave up, and in prison I learned the secret to change. And I'm going to share that with you tonight. So I have some assumptions. The first assumption I have is that change comes one of two ways. Either you choose it, you decide to get married, you decide to change vocations, or it broadsides you. Either way, change will always leave you feeling in between the way life used to be and the way life is going to be. And I do call that in between. And that in between has to be processed. For you to get from where you are to where you want to be, there is a moment of awkwardness. And I want to share with you that in between can be 6 months, it can be 6 weeks, it can be 12 weeks, whatever programs are. Those are all processes for in between. But I want to give you an example. When I was out of high school, the Reesburg Bank came into my high school and wanted to hire a young man that would work in one of the branches that they were going to be developing. Well, there was a slight problem, and that was that I was a farm boy and the son of a construction worker. And my dad believed in working hard, and the things that you do with your hands benefits more than things that you talk about. And so I go to the bank, and I want you to just picture this. I step off of the farm and I walk into the bank. And when I walk into the bank, I walk in with a white shirt, a tie, and a blue suit. And it feels how? Weird. Awkward and weird. And so I am in the bank now, and I'm working a few weeks, and I go home, and Dad sees me come home all dressed up, and he says, "Hey, Lyle, your hands are losing their calluses. You're starting to look like a sissy." And I go, well, you know, I suppose, so what do? I go out and I work on the binder twines and the bales to get my hands calloused back up, and then I go back to work. And the banker says, "So we want you to slow down, Lyle. When you come to town, we want you to cross where there are crosswalks and wait for the light. We don't want you running like you just robbed a bank." But I said, "I didn't rob the bank, I'm just hurrying, I'm in a hurry." "Well, slow down." So now I'm getting a message that I have to slow down, which is in conflict with my values and beliefs as a farm boy. And that keeps up. Over here, the banker's telling me, "You know, we want you to shave between 3 and 5 because you got a dark beard," which has changed a little lately, but you have a dark beard and you got that 5 o'clock shadow. Oh my goodness, that's me. But now he wants me to shave. So I go back home, and then my dad tells me I smell like the women's, all that perfume. So I go back to work, and I will tell you, if you stay in between and you haven't processed it in a healthy way, you will sabotage the opportunity you're trying to get. And I walked in that bank and told Don Proper, the president of the bank, I said, "You have to be a bird to stand in these cages, man. I'm done." And I left. And I sabotaged that opportunity. So I want to ask you, how many times have you been in between and sabotaged the opportunity that came up for you that you couldn't figure out a process of coaching your brain into the next level? The other assumption that I have is, this is the in-between, the other assumption that I have is that the brain is the organ of your behavior. It is the organ of your learned behavior, and it produces it beautifully. Another assumption is that the brain is a changeable organ, and I might just add that it is also resistant to change. But because the brain has plasticity, it can be changed. And if we coach the brain correctly, it will allow us to change it. But I want you to remember that if it wasn't for the possibility of having plasticity in the brain, there would be no reason for us to be in this room tonight. We would be locked into the behavior that you have. And maybe some of you are locked into the behavior that you caught. And so the next assumption is that the brain is a value and belief-driven organ. And the brain also has a neurological landscape that keeps those beliefs and values in place. And if you don't change the brain's landscape, it will never allow new values and beliefs to come into existence. You will always default. And so that's why I do not believe in tools and in skills because they will always default to the landscape of your values and your beliefs. So the other thing is that, whoops, I went the wrong way, sorry. So the brain is an organ behavior. I want to show you how this happens. So let's just take a moment, and I'd like you to just put your feet on the floor, put your hands on your legs, and we're going to quiet our brains. And so I want you to just close your eyes and just listen for a moment. I want you to breathe in energy and relaxation and exhale the tension and fatigue. And I want you to take everything off the screen of your mind and just focus on your breath coming in and going out. And now I'm going to remain silent while you do that for a moment. Bring yourself back present to this moment. Take some deep breaths. Feel more relaxed and more energized. And open your eyes when you're ready. Now, when you did that, folks, did anybody's brain wander? Did anybody's brain wander? Okay, and when you caught your brain wandering, what did you do? Did you bring it back to your breath? Okay, so that's the good news, folks, is that when your brain wanders or when your brain does something, you are not your brain and you can coach it. And we know that that's going to be, the assumption is if you don't coach your brain, someone else will. So now let's just take a look at this process, what I call the secret of change. And I want you to imagine we're talking about an attitude, and everybody in this room has one. As a matter of fact, there are more people hired and fired because of their attitude than all other reasons put together. So imagine attitude as a cloud. And out of that cloud is going to rain your thoughts. And neurologists tell us that we have 60,000 thoughts a day. I speak at about 125 words a minute with gusts up to 150. You listen a lot faster than that. So you're in and out, but you're still with me. And so 95% of the thoughts you have every day are the same. And if you think about that, you keep ratcheting it over and over and over and over, you're going to build pathways that are going to be very difficult to change. And now they estimate that 80% of our thoughts are negative. So at the end of the day, it's pretty hard to say, what a great day. Instead, we say, another day in paradise, just being facetious. And so we know that if we repeat our thoughts, we will have actions, because actions follow the thoughts we have. And those thoughts, if you repeat those, you'll have actions. Repeat those, you'll have a habit. And that habit is the way in which the brain runs, and I think that is the greatest secret I've learned in all my life. And that is, if we didn't have habits in our brains, you couldn't get up out of this seat and walk out when we're done. It would be a mess trying to get you out of here. And so with habits comes buttons and triggers. Anybody had a button push lately? Yeah? Okay, when you have a button push, that means that your brain's running on automatic pilot. It means it's running on the neurological landscape that has been created to support the values and beliefs that you have in place, that you caught, you never even evaluated whether you should have them. Many of us move our belief systems over into truths, and then we can use violence to defend them. But remember, you just caught them. You called them truths. They're still beliefs. And so now the brain knows that it can learn some values and some beliefs that it's not very popular for itself. And so it created a sense of self, of which you're talking to as I'm talking to you. Because you see, your sense of self, you talk to yourself about 60% of the time, and 40% of the time you talk to someone else. You yak 24/7. And that is always the same thing over and over. We know that the sense of self can go to sleep. We know that we can have problems with it. But we also know that it can inhibit anything that the brain has as a habit. It can inhibit it, and if it stays with it long enough, it will change. So if you have an attitude, thoughts, and actions that are all the same in habits, you will have a character, and that character will determine the quality of your life. And the quality of your life will never change until your attitude changes, and your attitude is the manifestation of your beliefs and your core values. Let me give you an example. When your core value is control, and some of us in here may have control as a core value, when it is, you feel that you know best and people should do it your way. Actually, you feel a little superior than most people, and you have to teach everyone else how to do it. And then you look over their shoulders to see if they're doing it right. And then you micromanage everything, and at the end of that, your character is judgmental, and your life is full of chaos. And when your life is full of chaos and control is your very top value, what do you want to do? You better control a little bit more. So, I'm sorry, I wasn't doing that. So you have to control it. You go back up to control more. And as you're controlling more, it'll come down and you'll have more chaos in your life. People will think that it's the people outside that's causing the chaos. It is not. It's the core value of control that's causing the chaos. If you think you can control your partner, if you think you can run the world, you got chaos coming your way. But let's just imagine if you had compassion as your core value. And compassion is your core value. Everyone has value is your belief. And everyone is you're accepting. You have positive thoughts. You're supportive. You're helpful. And everyone has you're helpful. And everyone says you care about everybody. And the life is meaningful. And I will tell you that when your life is meaningful, you do not have chaos in it. And so when it don't have chaos in it, you go back up and say, man, I really like being compassionate because it adds quality to my life. And then you start to find how much nicer people are. You like them even more, and then your life becomes more meaningful. So I went to prison, and before I went to prison, my core values were instant gratification, power, and control, and greed. And when you have that, my belief was the one with the best drugs, a lot of money, and the most toys wins. And so my attitude was I didn't care about anybody or anything, and I wanted to come all the way down, and my actual habit was dealing drugs. And you have to be disconnected from a community to deal drugs. And so I ended up in the Federal Bureau of Prisons for 22 years. Now my core values are transparency, wellness, and compassion. And my belief is, and it has been, that when I build a relationship with someone, it has such quality to it that if anything would happen to that relationship or that person, I would cry. And I know that my attitude is different. It manifests in my face, all of my habits, and people begin to say, you know, Lyle's really trustworthy. And what happens? I have great memories. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the core values that I have to change to stay out of prison. And if I keep those core values, I will never go back to prison. So when you think about it, I'd like you to just think about identifying your core values. I have created a process for doing that. It is really unique. But I will say that identifying your core values determines what kind of a person you want to be. And then living them determines what you're going to do. And what you do determines the quality of your life. So I want you to just think for a moment. The world spends billions of dollars for organizations to find their core values, but we don't have one class in school for you to identify your core values. Core values is what we have to talk about, not tools, skills, and techniques. We've got to change the neurological landscape that supports habits and beliefs that need to be changed, and there's processes for doing that. So I would just like to say that I think this idea is worth sharing. Thank you very much.